Hello and welcome back to my channel. Thanks so much for popping by here. And yes, today we're going on the next exciting video of the 3D False Matrix Programs series, where we are investigating limited beliefs and how we can shift our perspective from the 3D way of viewing reality through the separate self to the 5D self, connected. So yeah, welcome here. And something that came up to share at the beginning of this video was that about this 3D to 5D, and of course the 4D being the bridge in the middle, is that everyone's a master. So every human on this planet is a master. You're a master. The major difference is that in 3D, we're unrealized. In 4D, we are realizing, and in 5D, we are realized. And so yeah, that just kind of came up, and I'll add little things as we go. But I also wanted to share that if these videos resonate with you, it's best to start watching the series in chronological order. So from the very first one in order, because I am adding these little things as we go. I'll build upon concepts in previous ones and kind of make notes about different things, just because after every one of these videos I expand. And that's one really cool thing about sharing, is when we share what we have, it expands. So it's just like, oh, this other thing. And that's perfect to segue into today's topic, because after I made the last video on animals, I was thinking, I thought, well, of course, when we talked about animals, we talked about in 3D, we have a very fearful view of animals, not maybe all of them, but a lot of them, especially ones that we perceive can hurt us. And then as we move into 4D, we realize that animals are helpers, are guides, giving us clues, information. And then when we move into 5D, we realize that animals are another aspect of ourself, and that we're connected to every single one, and that they really are us, and that they are love. And so but the one thing is that someone in 5D is very tuned into their intuition, and someone in 4D is learning their intuition and learning to trust intuition, whereas someone in 3D basically has the intuition turned off. Sometimes they will use it without even knowing it's intuition, but I've noticed in the 3D realm, in that frequency, intuition is kind of seen as like out there, it's not real, it's can be considered crazy. But the reason this kind of came up when I was thinking about the last video is that even when we get to the place where we know all animals are love, and that if we give love, love will come back, and of course respect is love, so giving an animal space, but it's not like we can just go and cuddle with a leopard or something, because we understand this. It's to use the intuition. Intuition is the trump card, I'd say the default way of living. When you're in 5D, you're constantly connected to your intuition. Your entire life is going by intuitive, because intuition is when you're connected to your higher self, your guides, like fully connected, and you're just living from that because they see the bigger picture. Whereas in 3D, we see a very, very narrow kind of focus. of course, in 4D, in that bridge kind of realm, it's widening and widening. But I bring up that intuition part because I I've been learning it for so long. It just kind of, I never even thought to share it. But after I made the video, I was like, that's what it's so important that uh, when dealing with anything in this reality, of course, it's all us, it's all love. But if we intuitively feel like we should, give it space or that kind of thing, we need to trust that intuition. It's like this uh, little vision I had in my head. It's like a little maze where there's a path and then it splits off into two paths. And in one path, there's a dragon, and the other path is a meadow or something. And so when you're going down that path, you can't see the dragon or the meadow. You don't know which way. But your intuition will tell you to go the path of the meadow, and then you won't have to deal with the dragon. And so yeah, that was just a little thing that intuitively came to me right now to share. And of course, that's just a fun example, but you can put that on life in any situation. So if we're thinking about intuition from the 3D perspective, again, it doesn't really come into factor. In 3D, we are much more concerned with our intellect, with what we know to be true. And this we can think of as kind of like book smarts, or what it really is things we've been told by others, especially people in authority positions, such as maybe parents or primary caregivers or teachers, government, older kids at school, whoever was kind of in, musicians, in these kind of positions of authority. I feel like movies even do this to a lot of us. And we form these beliefs from what other people are telling us, basically, and we believe it to be true because it happened to someone else. But we all have a different journey, but we'll get to that part. But yeah, so in the 3D, we're concerned about intellect. We really ignore the intuition because in 3D frequency, we think of intuition as it's out there, it's not real, it's crazy, and we're much more concerned about intellect. And an example that came up to share was like being in elementary school, where you have, at least when I went to school, there's 4 subjects. There's English, social studies, science, and math. And what the whole vibe was is that if you do good in these 4 subjects, you'll be successful in life. But if not, it's not good to be you, kind of thing. And if we dissect that, number one, it's very subjective because what one person thinks is good could be different from another. So it becomes judgmental. Judgment is kind of seeing the world as good or bad, right or wrong. And it also, it forms these beliefs, and it kind of perpetuates this belief in the 3D frequency of, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough, I'm not worthy. And it's awful. But we did create this 3D reality to experience this and to go through it, and for the challenge of it. And so we realize it's not to blame anyone, because that, again, is a very 3D perspective. If I were to blame the education system for putting in these fear-based beliefs in so many of us, that would be very 3D, because that would be judgmental. The 5D perspective, the higher perspective, is that we created this for an experience to remember who we are, and that when we have these certain realizations, yeah, life is just going to get so much better. But the reason I say that is so easy to blame the institutions, the parents, anyone who programmed us. But this series isn't about blaming who programmed us. This series is about making you aware of the programs so that we can let them go and rise up to a higher frequency, or just an easier, more joyful, more loving way of living. And from this perspective, we actually see the purpose in the programming, and we feel gratitude, like deep, immense gratitude to be programmed, because we realized we chose our life based on the programming that we would get. So we chose our parents, where we were gonna, and because of where they lived, what kind of life we were gonna have, basically for the programs. So we realize, and we don't blame ourselves for that choice, because again, in a higher frequency, there is no blame, there's no judgment. We think, wow, we chose so good. We chose the perfect life to be programmed in these ways, to have these experiences, to realize the programming, and then to let it go. And in that way, we can assist others. We have more compassion, and there's so many benefits, and we realize how perfect it all is. And so I just wanted to say that as well in this one, as we go along in the series. And so intellect, very 3D way of, I know this and I'm gonna stick with this. And I wanted to mention intelligence, because intelligence is different than intellect. Intelligence is reading between the lines. So being able to look at something or hear something or read something and kind of pick up on the message that it's saying. So in 3D, of course, we can do this, and many people do without realizing it. And like I said last time, we exist in many dimensions, and so in all of them really. But yeah, so there's this intelligence, this reading between the lines, which is more of a 4, to me, just coming to my intuition. It's more of a 4D kind of thing, which we kind of, and we'll flow into a bit. But what really starts to happen as we continue to grow and go along on our journey is experiences. And when we have these experiences, we realize, hey, wait a minute, this person told me this, but I'm having this other experience and I'm seeing it in a very different way. And maybe that person wasn't as right as I thought they were, kind of thing. And so it's really experiences. The more experiences we have, the better. And they are the thing that starts to deconstruct these belief systems, maybe even before we awaken. We could maybe learn about, for example, we're taught growing up that you need to go to university and get a good education if you're going to do well in this life. And then we hear about someone who didn't have a university education and they made a multi-million-dollar business. And we say, wait a minute, I was told this, but I see this. And And that in itself is an experience. And then we have our own personal experiences. And one of mine that really relates to this intuition thing is that for me, I went through a phase where I just thought I was very in the 3D mode, and I just thought intuition was crazy and it's not real and don't listen to it. And there was one day, it was kind of coming up to Christmas, and I remember going to the liquor store, and I haven't drank in years, but I was very much into that at that time. And I went to the liquor store, I guess, but before I went, I decided to go to the ATM. And interestingly, there was someone there watching me go to the ATM. And if I was tuned into my intuition, I would have picked up on that and I wouldn't have gone to the ATM, but I wasn't. So I go to the ATM, then I buy the alcohol for the night for me and my friend, and then I come out, and then there's this person. And this person was not quite homeless, but very close. But they said they had this great deal on to sell me some weed, sell me some cannabis, and this was before it was legalized, and so of course I had someone who people I could get it from, but there's this random person on the street offering me this deal I couldn't refuse. And also with cannabis, I haven't had this in years, but I felt it was appropriate to share these things in the story because yeah, I just want to be open and transparent. So anyway, this person who obviously kind of not in the best time of their life wants to sell me this weed. And I say, I don't know. And they keep on trying to convince me. And eventually I'm like, okay, whatever. And they say, okay, well, first we got to go get it. So follow me. So I follow this person across the street to this really, I don't want to be judgmental, but just an observation. It was not a nice hotel. It was like a pay by the night hotel. That should give you a clear picture. And the hotel room, I felt there was multiple people using that, and it was a very, even at that point when I wasn't tuned into my intuition or anything, it felt really bad, felt really like I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time, but I just went along with it. And then this person came out, and then we went back across the street to the alcohol store because it had a big parking lot, and they were going to show me the stuff in the parking lot. So so we get to the parking lot, and then they pull out this bag, and I touched it, and I could feel it right away. It was just a bag in a bunch of other bags. So like a plastic bag stuffed in a plastic bag, stuffed in a plastic bag. So I kind of looked at this person and I was like, there's no weed in that. And I turned around and I kind of just started walking away. And I'll be honest, I was doing it in an arrogant fashion, just walking away like I'm all that with my bag of alcohol, and my intuition was screaming, run, run, run. And because I wasn't tuned into that, I wasn't believing it, I thought, no, that's just crazy. Run, run, run. And next thing I know, I turn my head just a little bit, and this person punches me across the side of the face and right over this ledge. So it knocks out my earring, and I was wearing contact lenses at the time. It actually knocked out one of the contact lenses, one of the earrings, and I lost a shoe because I fell off the thing. So interesting, looking back, that those three things uh, came off me at the time. Wow, I never thought about it that deeply. But yeah, now with my new perspective, I'm sure I can glean a whole bunch more out of it. But anyway, basically, this person punched me, and so could only see them with one eye. I only had one shoe on. I didn't even know I had lost the earring yet, and I kind of just went into. This is the moment I went into an intuitive state without even realizing it, and I guess in a fight or flight mode. And I took my bottle of alcohol, and I basically took it and used that to hit the person. And of course, I'm not proud of this story at all. It takes me a bit to get it out, but this is what happened, and I think it is valuable to share because it happened for a purpose. So I hit them with these bottles, and it was filled with glass bottles, and I hit them as hard as I could, and then I ran into there's a liquor store on the top and then a bar on the bottom, kind of like a two-story thing. So I ran into the bar port, and I was like shaking, and I told the bartender what happened, and they're like, want to call the cops, and I was like humming and hawing about it. I was like, I don't know, like at that time, like I said, cannabis wasn't legal, so it's like, what are you gonna tell the cops? I'm like trying to buy illegal drugs, and I got jumped, and yeah, so I decided not to call the cops, but I called my friend who was staying at my place, and they came and walked up and then walked me home. And it was so weird. But looking back, I see the purpose in that. There's so many purposes. Of course, don't buy drugs from strangers off the street, but the biggest one is listen to your intuition. My intuition, that was the time where my intuition was the loudest, and I actually heard like a word. Often intuition comes in the form of a knowing, but that time it was like a clear yelling, run, run, run. And so yeah, that was really an eye-opener. Too bad I didn't really realize it, and I was too concerned about getting drunk and stoned that it took me several more years before my awakening. But yeah, so I just wanted to share that story because I feel like even when we're in a very 3D dense frequency, our intuition is trying to get our attention, and we just ignore it and keep on ignoring it. But as we start to awaken in this 4D frequency range, we start to again tap into our intuition. We realize, wow, this is our greatest gift. And Einstein has a famous quote about that, about how this isn't word for word, but basically how society is so engulfed in their intellect, they're missing out on the greatest gift, which is the intuition. And because I had trained myself that it was crazy for so long, it has taken me a while to get tuned in and to trust it and to listen to it. And I've used various tools like dowsing, the pendulum, and these can be very helpful. And I feel intuitively that I'll eventually make a video on those. And they're kind of like training wheels to get you to help trust yourself in and trust your intuition, because like I said earlier in the video, your intuition is coming from your higher self, your guides, basically from a higher realm that sees everything, that sees your timelines, and as in this human experience, we just see like what's in front of us. And so it's so helpful to have that intuitive information. The other really cool thing is intuition is in the highest good of all involved, always. So it's not only in your highest good, but maybe someone you meet along the journey, or how it could affect different people, or even different animals, or plants, or who knows what, but we're all connected. And the intuition, if we start to learn to follow that, we're not only doing what's best for us, but best for the whole greater good for everyone. And so yeah, that is where we are heading to, of course, as we move in this 4D to 5D. And as I said near the beginning, when we reach 5D, we are living completely intuitively, completely trusting our intuition. And how does this come? It comes as inspiration, it comes as impulses, it comes as ideas, and in many forms. The main form is just like this knowing that this is what I should do. That's often how it is for me. I just have an idea and I feel like this is what I got to do right now. And it makes it so easy, and you can also tell you're listening to your intuition because things come together so easy and magically, and it just flows. And of course, sometimes we get audible things, and that people would call that clairaudience, where you actually hear words. And it's so funny. I remember when I started connecting, I was surprised at how few words that like my guides are the information I would get. You expect maybe after you read a channeled thing that you're gonna get all this, and the word is it's just like relax, or or something like that. And oftentimes also I've noticed my guides are, or at least one of my guides is hilarious, is so funny, and they've said things to me that have just burst me into laughter, like me laughing so much. And so it's a beautiful thing. And then also intuition can come in the form of visions, of course, and this can happen during meditation, or just literally anytime through the day, or in your dreams. Often in our dreams, our higher self is communicating to us or showing us things to help us understand something, or come to a new perspective, or bringing up something to let go. And then, of course, the knowing, and the feeling, so claircognizance and clairsentience. So the feeling of intuition is this feeling that is a very positive feeling. And a little test that I do sometimes is, if I'm given a decision, I think about doing one outcome and see how that feels, and then think of doing another outcome and see how that feels. And that can be very telling. For example, say, something that happened in my life, I do sometimes some freelance graphic design, website design, and there was a client, a potential new client, and I just had this funny feeling about it, and I just felt Like, no. Uh, Even though if I was focused on my intellect, it would say, you know, you need money, you should go, you need all the work you can get, you got to take that job. And then my intuition was saying, no, trust that everything will work out. And this is just, and what I realized is it was a test to see if that I had created for myself, to see if I would actually listen to my intuition. Because a lot of times when we don't listen to our intuition and do what our intellect tells us to do, we get ourselves into situations just that don't feel good and that never felt good from the get-go. So it's a learning experience. Again, you'll only realize how important it is to listen to your intuition if you've not listened to it for many times, at least for me, on my journey, on my path. Maybe there's people out there who don't have to go through all that stuff, but for me, I know I had to go through all the things I did to get to this part. And so, and that's perfect for me. But I also know what another person chooses is perfect for them. And to respect that, and yeah, so I feel like this is the perfect place to wrap up. I feel like I've given you a lot today, but I'm also very passionate about intuition, as you can see. And literally, well, I try to live my life completely by intuition. I have so many different examples, and I just shared the ones that came up to share with you today, but I'm sure many more will come up in videos to come. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your views, likes, subscribes, all that stuff. And and yeah, I just hope you have a wonderful day and love you lots. Thank you. Bye bye.